You're listening to the Flex Success podcast, where we teach you how to be less shit.
I'm your co-host Lizzy, and this is Dean. We'll be covering all topics relating to health, fitness, and bodybuilding.
Join us as we use our in the trenches experience and up-to-date science to provide you with information that you can actually use.
If you like what we do, be sure to give us a like, follow, share, and tag us on social media. Two episodes ago, I recorded a bodybuilding Q&A with Flex Coach George and Flex Coach Dean. After that, we had George's latest pro on, Blake, which was fun. And now we're doing a part 2 of the bodybuilding Q&A, again with Dean and George. Welcome back, boys.
How's it going, guys?
Thank you for having us.
Hey.
You're welcome. Hey, I feel so left out without a coffee. Damn it.
Look, we've all got a mug and we've all got a Flex shirt on. And we've got 3 different. George has got the compact coffee cup.
Clem coffee and cardio.
A ritual to buy.
Is that from Jazz?
Yeah, Jazz and compact, yeah.
That's funny. I love it. Okay, so we're just going to finish off the list of questions that people sent through on Instagram. Starting with, what areas do you think most coaches are lacking in?
Ooh. I think in the amateur space, I'm gonna separate into the 2 different spaces of pro coaches, people who coach primarily pros, because I think there is a difference, and people who coach primarily amateurs. In the amateur space, it's probably like a lack of soft skills. I think most people come into the industry with a pretty keen, want and drive to be very smart and understanding all the physiology, and they come in with all these like really hard skills, and they know how the body works and what to do and how to manipulate food, but they don't really know how to manage the person. And I know we speak about this quite a lot. So I think that's the thing that lacks the most in amateurs, and it's probably what is needed the most in order to get like really good results. But then in the pro ranks, I think the more established you become as a pro coach, the lower the diversity of your clientele, which means you get less and less practice at problem solving things that aren't normal. And it seems to be, to me, that there is a cycle with pro coaches that do very well, then they get more clients, then they do very, very well. And then they all of a sudden just don't seem to do much better because either something's changed and they don't know how to do it, or they just keep repeating the same approach, the same protocol with every possible client. And you don't see all of the clients that aren't on social media getting really shit results. You only see the genetically elite, and then they come unstuck and then they disappear. Whereas I think the coaches that have seemingly come up through the ranks, like bringing people into the pro divisions, always do well because they have a thirst for learning, and they also are much better at problem solving. And I've probably seen this happen now, like over the last 10 or so years, repeatedly. So I think they, they lack a diversity of client, which means they don't continue to learn.
Okay, I want to pull on 2 threads there. First one being, some people might be a little bit foggy on what soft skills are. So I want to get a definition there. And also, when you're talking about diversity of clients, my understanding of what you mean is the following. Tell me if I'm wrong. They just get clients who are a yes coach, tell me what to do and I'll do it kind of thing. Is that what you mean? They don't get clients who sometimes are a little bit trickier, or clients that have, I don't know, specific needs, whether it's to do with psychology or with particular disease states or something like that. They just have kind of easy, highly self-motivated clients.
Definitely the self-motivation side of things. They are just doers. However, I also think that the people that rise to the top are the genetically elite anyway. So no matter which way you kind of skin that cat, so to speak, they're going to probably do quite well. So they also just, afforded the opportunity to do an average job and still get fantastic results, at least visually on stage. But that's not to say that the pros that are already doing well because they are genetically elite couldn't also do like far, far better if they had better approaches.
Okay. If you could please not move for the rest of the podcast, that would be great, because your squeaky chair is very squeaky. So just stay perfectly still.
Got it.
Oh my God. Not even any deep. Stop it. So annoying. Okay. So going back to soft skills. I personally, when I hear soft skills, I think it's about helping the person do what you're asking them to do, essentially. So it comes down to helping the person with mindset, motivation, attitudes towards their body, attitudes towards food, habit setting, behavior change. That's sort of my idea of soft skills. Does that change? Does that differ from yours, Dean?
No, that's exactly it.
Okay. George, my friend.
So I don't disagree with Dean. I just think that perhaps my exposure in the industry differs from his exposure, and what I've seen, I'd say, especially with some of the younger coaches coming up, is actually the inverse. Is that there is an incredible lack of baseline education. I always coin the phrase that I hear coaches, quoting key stage 2 biology that we learn at like the age of 12, 14 in school wrong, or just completely almost made up. And there's a barrier to entry that must be met, and I feel like there is an expectation that if you're going to help people go through the processes of physique development, there is at least a minimum understanding that we need. And because of the lack of like a further education system that is specific toward coaching, there's not that kind of certification that people need to cross to be coaches, and it allows for a lot more cowboys to just go and do instead of actually understanding the nuts and bolts of what they're actually doing. And that is always problematic for health concerns, issues with mental relationships with the self, with their body image, their relationship with food. And there's a lot of those problems, and I think due to not having that kind of barrier.
Okay. Can I maybe discuss a bridge between these two perspectives? Um, First one being agreeing with George that coaching is the wild, wild west. Um, I think that there's definitely truth to both, and both of these perspectives can coexist, in my opinion, and this is the bridge. That there are lots of coaches without a basic level of understanding of nutrition and physiology and like the hard skills that we're talking about. But I also think that I would agree with Dean's perspective in that the coaches that do value education and are investing in education only invest in the hard skills. And it's sexier to talk about. It's a little bit more clickable. It's a little bit more like Instagrammable. There's way more courses out there on biomechanics and physiology and like the typical hard sciences. And so George's perspective is people don't have enough of this understanding, and I would agree. But I would also agree with Dean that like people who are educated are only educated in the hard skills. So I don't know. What do you guys think about that bridge?
I'd agree. I just think there's also a difference in perhaps when Dean's thinking of it, his kind of age bracket and experience of people he's met and conversed with in the industry is going to be a little bit more broad spectrum than mine. And also there's an age bracket of coaches that I see and would talk to that are somewhat in the younger, more immature kind of processes of their journey coming up. So I still think that the hard skills technically would logically come first prior to developing as a coach with the soft skill aspect, because you kind of need to know what to do as a coach first before you can develop the skill set of how to actually coach. So I guess it's just more perspective. Mine's maybe a little bit different to Dean's, but I don't disagree with him at all in any way. Like it's still a big.
Yeah. I think what you said there is actually very much the case, in that the coaches that I see now that I think that I would be compared to in the industry from like how well they've solidified themselves as a coach, the things that they lack the most are the things that I've mentioned. But I suppose broadly speaking, there's far more coaches out there that have, let's call it parrot knowledge as opposed to baseline knowledge. And that is super problematic, especially when you get into the clients that have problems that need a lot of like critical thinking skills, because there's no baseline knowledge there. This actually segues fucking amazingly into one of the questions that I think we have coming up later on in regards to starting again and how would you expedite the process? Because George, you're also exposed to more people that are seeking out your information as a mentor and as on a consultation basis, and you would see that the baseline is missing. So maybe that's where this conversation may end up anyway, because I have some thoughts
When you
on
say
that.
baseline, you mean like foundational knowledge?
Yeah, just like the stuff that you do learn out of a textbook. So, when
Uh-huh.
someone comes to you and says, oh, well, you'll hear people say, talking about general physical preparedness phases, or specificity blocks in the periodization, and like all they use these words because they've heard them. It's like, yeah, but what does it mean? And like, oh, and like, why would you do more reps versus less reps, or more rest versus less rest? It's like, oh, this person's doing a low volume program because it's going to resensitize them to the volume. Like, yeah, but like, what does that mean? And like, do you even know what the energy systems are? Like, it's the energy system stuff that now allows me to go, this is why I would do a GPP versus an SPP versus a metabolic versus a non-metabolic, whatever it may be,
Okay, cool. And so, Dean, if you were to start again as a coach, what would you do to expedite the process?
I wouldn't expedite it, is my grand, I suppose, scheme or overarching concept, because I don't think you can. I think the most important factor once you get beyond like the education process of a coach is time and application, and you just can't really speed that up. If I was to give somebody some advice that's at least usable, though, instead of just saying wait your turn, it would be that I would probably seek out consultations and mentors and try and learn as fast as possible, from an application perspective. But I just don't think that you can like bunny hop over the baseline education that George has just mentioned. So if we were to take the assumption is that you've got a baseline understanding of physiology through education that's either self-taught, what's the word for that? Autodidact. I learned that the other day.
I don't know what this word means.
Autodidactic is that you've not learned through formal education, but rather you are self-taught. You are autodidactic, I think it is. Anyway, whether it's that or the other, traditional, non-traditional, I think that baseline is there. But once you've got some of the baseline stuff, then I think expediting the process would come through or via mentorships and consultations, to then try and like upskill yourself from the book stuff to the application stuff without the application. And then you take that perceived understanding of application and actually start applying it. But I don't think you can really speed up the actual application side of things.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'd say Dean's pretty much just described my last sort of 5 years of being a coach. Like, it started off leaving school with no real interest in physiology or the human body or anything to do with that. I was working on site, and my own interest led me to self-educate the baseline up to the standard. And then I started investing an enormous amount of some very stupid income that could have probably been put into savings as a younger person, but I invested that into mentors every single step of the way. Every single coach I had was offering me something more than just my own progress. It was always, the first one was teaching me the logistics of how to be a coach from a bit more of like a business to foundational structural setup standpoint. Moving into my next one, which was more to kind of learn the nuts and bolts of being a bodybuilder, then more education based with Joe. It was always someone teaching me and obviously filling in the gap of knowledge that I didn't have. And not to be, I don't know, it comes across arrogant when I say this, but I'd say that my trajectory has been relatively efficient, not fast, but efficient in getting from that point A to point B, where Dean's saying, when now the skin in the game is the next bit that now continues that expedition of the process.
Mm-hmm. I would maybe add that where possible, go all in, because I know a lot of people who advertise themselves online as coaches, and it's like their full-time passion. And then you actually get to know them and you're like, oh, so you work at a bank 9 to 5 and you do this on like Saturday afternoons. Like, that's only going to be 4 hours a week or something like that. Where possible, can you go all in? Maybe you have to take a couple of steps backwards to go 5 steps forwards later, but you're kind of quote unquote expediting the process because you're just getting more skin in the game faster.
Absolutely. Absolutely. COVID was such a great opportunity for that. Like, oh, no more working on site, just sit on the laptop, just drill education, coaching constantly. It was perfectly timed.
Yeah, totally. All right. So our next question is totally unrelated, but it goes like this. Thoughts on insulin loading. Thoughts on insulin loading, full stop. Sorry, I didn't put a full stop between that question and the next question, which threw me. Thoughts on insulin loading?
Depends. To context of peak week, I'm assuming. I think it could be a very smart, useful tool if you have an individual who has a capacity of food needs that are past what physiologically would be possible to load. You can leverage that to get more food in. But I think that how you're approaching that as a tool to support the loading process rather than this tool of this PED that's going to maximize and change your look in some like magical way at the last moment. It's not going to change anything crazy, but just to support the systems we're already manipulating.
Mm. Yeah, I think it's largely unnecessary in a normative peaking protocol where time is not sensitive, because time being in either days or the quantity of carbohydrates needed to be loaded in a particular amount of time, because your body's pretty fucking good at doing that. And it's also very insulin sensitive at that point in time, on the assumption that you've been eating some carbohydrates and you haven't downregulated those enzymatic processes responsible for carbohydrates being stored as glycogen. So there's a few asterisks here. But if you're trying to like essentially play God, whereby you're trying to drive more carbohydrates into the cell than you can probably do with the amount of time that you have with the natural response to the carbohydrates you have to get in, then you can probably do that pretty well with insulin, or you can at least do it better than what you could in the absence of it. So like a perfect example of this is like a rapid backload of carbohydrates where there's a huge quantity of carbohydrates going in a very short period of time. And there's always a lag period between consumption of carbohydrates and storage of glycogen. And that's why, like, usually in a rapid backload, someone looks pretty good the next day, but then they look even better the next day because they're still, assimilating the carbohydrates they've consumed. That's when something like insulin exogenously being used is advantageous, because you are quite literally playing physiological God, let's just say, or carbohydrate God. But for the most part, I think it's unnecessary. But George's point, just quickly, is super important, is that you're still using it to like bias efficiency than you are to necessarily use it to drive the outcome itself. Like, you shouldn't be eating carbohydrates to match insulin. You should be using insulin to support carbohydrates.
So long as the need's there.
Okay, and when might it be a bad idea?
On show day, typically, in most cases. I've seen some silly people do insulin before they go on stage, thinking it's going to drive like a massive pump because they use it before they're training in the off season. They get these really crazy insulin pumps, and they think that's kind of going to apply without accounting for the crazy glucagon process that ends up happening once you end up with an insane amount of insulin in the system and not enough carbs to support it.
The other thing about that show day is that you cannot account for the impacts of adrenaline as much as what you could in a relaxed peak week, and the effects that that's going to have on energy availability. There's too many variables to fuck around with there, and also like most of the pump drive that you're going to get in a backstage sort of scenario is largely going to be predicated on fluid balance and hydration, not even on carbohydrates. I think too many people overstate the importance of carbohydrates on show day. For the most part, that doesn't mean they're not important. I just think there's too great of an importance placed on them for most people.
Okay, cool. Who do you guys think has a really good grasp on this and does it really well?
George.
Okay.
Sweet, Dean.
Yes, that's exactly what I was going for.
Okay. Food intolerances on prep. Why does it happen?
God, fucking egg whites. Oh my God. That brings back memories of this conversation. Egg whites was a staple of my off season for so long. And through most of my prep, absolutely fine. Toward the back end, all of a sudden, it was like the plague for my body. My gastric stress was through the roof. I was always bloated straight away after meal one with the egg whites. And the only real physiological change that's occurring here that would have been different is my stress response and all the factors affecting my allostatic load. And just for listeners, allostatic load is just a terminology to group together all the different stresses that we can have acting upon us, or all the different things that may implement stress on the physique. Can be in our control, outside of our control, physical, mental, emotional. So any kind of facet of stress change in the system will typically cause some dysregulation to how the entire gastrointestinal tract operates, typically from even like the mouth all the way through to the rectum. And in its extremity, we can see a large degree of changes in microorganism production in the stomach, and that usually changes some things like pH balance, ability to digest certain foods. That's typically where the intolerance kind of come from. It's not necessarily that you can't eat the food anymore, it's just the gut environment typically changes due to the stress response after so long that at the time it just can't deal with the digestibility.
Yeah, it's a really weird phenomena. And I say phenomena because it happens all the time with lots of different individuals for different types of foods. Um, I I only think that your explanation of it, George, is the most logical and plausible one for it to be true, because even like physiologically, typically, the more frequently you eat something, the greater the enzymatic process is for the digestion then of that food, whether, whatever it is. So usually you eat more of it, you do better with it. But then there's this moment within a prep that you commonly see foods of no particular description just going south in regards to digestion. Although I would say egg whites is fairly common, um, you know, because the quantity that you can consume is quite high. And the only thing that I can plausibly ever come up with that is that exactly that a change in totality of stress and then a tolerance to that stress and its impact on GI function. And then maybe as an adage to that would be as you start to have not an intolerance, but a sensitivity, I guess, to a food within prep, as that starts to like accumulate, your brain then starts to associate that food with that response, which just then exacerbates the response and makes it worse. So often is the time you can just remove that mental association with the food and they're fine. So it's not that the food itself
I
is fine,
mean,
it's just that food in that particular time is problematic and stress is too high and so on and so on and so on.
isn't that like telling an angry person to not be angry? Like, how can you just say, we'll just remove the mental association of bloating with egg whites, for example? Like,
Oh,
how do you do that?
no, I mean more so you just remove it and just acknowledge the fact that it's possibly a mental thing as much as it is a physical thing, but just
Remove the food. Is that what
let
you're
them
saying?
have their thought to say, I'm intolerant to egg whites. Ah, you're probably not, but like right now you might just be having some issues with it. So let's just remove it. Like it's not worth the debate.
Right. I thought you meant like remove the mental association. And I was like, well,
Mm,
okay.
you know, pretty hard to do some exposure therapy or a lack thereof in a prep in such a short period of time to make them feel like, oh, it's just my brain.
And the best thing about having like a pretty firm grasp on nutrition is that we understand that no one particular food type is necessary for any particular outcome. There's always a swap we can make, always a good substitute.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, cool. So next question. Hopefully I've put the full stops where they're meant so that I don't confuse myself. What extent does being the favorite or having a big social media following as an amateur affect comparison?
Hmm.
Who sent this question through? That's an interesting one.
I think that might have been Noah actually. Shout out to Noah. I'm pretty
I
sure
know.
a very good thinker, I would say.
Hmm.
No, I think this has a positive and a negative from the athlete's perspective that a lot of social pressure can often be a hindrance as opposed to a positive driving force because of the pressure of having to perform. But in regard to like actual as it affects the judges, we're in a subjective sport, and I'd like to say that no, it wouldn't affect maybe where you're compared or where you place. But the reality is, if you're on someone's brain, even somewhat subconsciously, there's going to be a tendency to look at that person or be drawn to that person. So, if there is an expectation of someone coming into a show, then eyes are probably going to be on you.
Mm.
Yeah, I suppose though, if you're a really photogenic physique, or I don't want to use the word Photoshop, you put filters and stuff on your physique to look better before you post it online. And then someone sees you, and then for that reason, you become kind of like the favorite and eyes are on you. But then in person, you don't look as good. I think that's where it could not work in your favor.
Yeah, absolutely. But no, I'd like to hope it didn't happen, but we are human beings and we are somewhat driven by some subconscious urges.
Mm.
I think that like it's it would be really difficult to think that it wouldn't happen. It's just the way the
I mean,
cookie crumbles.
Steve, I'm
Mm.
coming into it. Like, there's so much hype on him. Every single judge on that panel is going to be looking to see what he looks like compared to the open guys immediately.
Of course.
Yeah, I think of the pros, it's a bit different to the amateurs, but I think it's less important than the luck of the draw of which number you get as an athlete and therefore who you stand next to first on stage. I think that has a far bigger impact on your ability to be seen if you're not popular or you are popular. We've used this example before with Samson back in the day. I think Samson's career trajectory jumped up probably 2 years in a matter of minutes because he got lucky in that his number comparison a couple of years ago on the Olympia was next to Big Ramy, who was the current top guy, and he probably would never have got the chance to stand next to him in a comparison. But by default of just the walking out numbers, he got the chance, and it highlighted his physique, and it actually was bad for Ramy. And since then, his career has just gone up. He's been given every opportunity to be compared, not only because he's physically good enough, but also because now he's a known bodybuilder. I don't think amateur judges are really paying all that much attention to amateur bodybuilders to the point where they would actually recognize them so much. There's a few people maybe in Australia that might have that, but I don't think it's that grand. I also think like, is it like hindsight bias would say that, you know, you see this popular person do well on stage, therefore the popularity makes a difference because they got compared. But then I also think like maybe they're popular because they're good. And because they're good, they got compared and they won because they're good, but they're also popular. You know, the only time that you could really probably argue for this is if a physique that was worse ends up in a place that they didn't deserve because they just never got compared to people that were better than them because they got the chance first. And I have seen that happen before in pro divisions, I think, you know, where there's been 60 people in a lineup and the most popular, well-known people are in the first 20. And then there's some freaks in the bottom 20 that have just not really ever been seen before. And because there's so many people being compared, they never really got a chance to stand next to the good guys. But yeah, I don't think it makes a massive difference in the amateurs.
Okay. I mean, what about when a person is coached by a favorite of the judges or is coached by someone that the judges don't like? Do you think that makes a difference?
I'd like to hope not. Again, I'd imagine that there might be some people that maybe aren't doing their job correctly and allowing emotional bias to sway their decisions. But again, that's one I'd hope definitely wasn't happening.
Mm.
Unconsciously is more what I had in mind. Like, I wouldn't like to think that people are so malicious. Um, but I like, let's say I was a judge and I really disliked a coach, and or maybe I didn't dislike them as a person, but I really disagreed with their political opinions, or I don't know, something that grinded my gears. I think even though I know objectivity as impossible as that is as a judge, but as much as possible, I know how important that is. I think even I would find it difficult to objectively assess someone's physique if I was like their coach is a cunt. Don't you think? It would like at least subconsciously come into play.
Mm. I don't know.
Well, I mean,
I'd be more inclined to feel sorry for them for having a shithead of a coach than I would judge them poorly for their physique. But again, I think this is non-existent in the pro division. I think it's actually legitimately non-existent because there's most of the coaches that have got the best athletes are recognized as being the best coaches. So that kind of doesn't exist, even if they have shitty opinions. In the amateurs, the one good thing that I think they do is that they don't mention the coach and or who they're coached by if it's a company until the routines, and that comes out after all of the judging has been done. So unless the person is very well known to the judges, as in the client, and then the client has been posting a lot about their coach, they wouldn't know.
Okay, but do you think that's done for exactly this reason?
I don't think so. Um, I just think it's the order that it's always been, just by default, because it hasn't changed for many years.
I
Uh,
mean, yeah.
on the flip, can I just say this though? This is in the IFBB. Prior to this, my one experience of being at the WBFF shows when they existed was that the individual would walk out to do their T walk first, and they would be introduced by their name and then by their coach only if they were coached by a WBFF pro. Otherwise, they did not speak about the coach whatsoever. Now, in that instance, I would say 100% there was some manipulation of who should win or who should be compared. Absolutely. And we can talk ill of them because they're no longer. So fuck those guys. However,
Fuck
I
those
don't
guys.
think it happens in the IFB.
Well, I
Didn't
mean,
they also have some like points given to, or they took into consideration how big your social media following was if they
part
like
of the
when
criteria.
deciding who to give first, second, and third to? That's so
Yeah.
fucked.
And it with the total of social media presence and stage presence
Marketability.
Marketability, actually, that combined outweighed the score for the physique, I believe. If you added all those components up, they were actually more than the worth of the physique in its totality, which is why FMG is so good, because the big bulk, the 70%, is just your physique on stage.
Mm.
But no, going back of that about the amateurs, Liz, there is definitely a few examples I could think of with some questionable morality that still have clients that do very well, indifferent of their approaches or some of the things they say on social media and how they come across. And they still have clients that are doing incredibly well. So I don't think it really makes a positive or negative impact.
Okay. Well, that's good. Okay. Next question. It's very serious, and I need you guys to take this seriously. How much growth does it take to maintain godly beards like you boys?
My experience for beard growth, I always joke, but there is some reality in it that once I started utilizing growth hormone and pushing the envelope of PEDs, shock with their male characteristic enhancing capabilities, I did notice that my beard went from a prepubescent couple of strands, somewhat more homeless looking, to this now. This is not all genetics. I guess there is some component to have the capacity to, but natural George was not growing this.
The main. I could not have grown this at all without any kind of performance enhancing drug, beard performance enhancing drugs. I would say that that it's more to do with testosterone than it is growth, though. Growth will make it grow faster, but the lusciousness of it, and even just the quantity of hairs per square millimeter of jawline has only ever increased in the presence of more more androgen.
So what we're saying
Yeah,
is,
actually.
look at this on YouTube. I've apparently abused more drugs than Dean.
Or you started with a better baseline of hair and I had none and I've abused more. Who knows? I mean, if you look at my family history, none of the men have beards and none of them have the capacity to have beards. So I am quite an anomaly with my level of growth at the moment compared to the rest of my siblings and my dad, that's for sure.
Dean is not a hairy man at all. No hair on his shoulders or back. And when we first got together, not a single hair on his stomach or chest. But now he has like a snail trail and like a few hairs sprouting here and there on his chest. And yeah, he's a different man.
He's finally grew into a man.
I was gonna say, I am a man now. I am a man now.
He hit puberty.
Yeah,
That's funny
to me because I look like Chewbacca if I don't share. Like I'm all hair, not much skin.
That's funny. Sometimes I feel like Dean is wasted on me though, because I know like a lot of women really like chiseled six packs and like they don't like hair. Where I'm not saying I don't like six packs or guys that don't have hair, but I actually like also don't mind a chubber who's really hairy. Like it's fine by me. So just Dean's a bit of an Adonis and just kind of wasted on me, but I appreciate you too, Dean.
For bodybuilding though, right? Like less time having to shave him all the time, and when he's getting ready, just he's primed, ready to go. Tan on, let's roll.
He was born ready for stage.
I would hate to have to like shave the entirety of my body like that for bodybuilding if I was like super fucking hairy. Like some of the guys that I know have to do it, I'm just like, whoa, that's a lot of effort.
God damn, dude.
So much opportunity for ingrowns.
I know a guy who he's Greek, Italian, or just Greek. I don't know if I want to name names. Anyways, we were talking about him last night, Dane, if you know what I'm talking about. And he is so hairy that he understands it's a problem for bodybuilding, that he gets like his whole body lasered. But whenever he cycles back on, it's like he got no laser at all. There's like 2 hairs per pore. It's a serious problem.
But he has 2 hairs per pore on the inside of his biceps. Like,
yeah, it's like, great. He's so
even
hairy.
where every man is bald, he is not.
I mean, I get hairy biceps, but they're thin hairs.
Uh-huh.
Nope. This is like you know, he shaves and it looks like he's hairier than me now. Like, and it's days. He has to pretty much, I think, stay on like a daily rotation to keep that shit trimmed up. And you know what the crazy thing is he is pretty well trimmed all the time.
That's ridiculous.
Yeah, he's a very groomed man, isn't he?
So I do have a friend that has also lasered his face for his beard because he would grow hair too much up towards the eye. So he just had the laser put in and was like, I'll just cut that, at least thin it up a little bit, So,
Does it look too done?
no, it's just thinned up, so he still grows hair there. It's just nowhere near as thick as what it used to be.
Fair enough.
Mm.
How?
Yeah.
Because I've had hair laser removal, and I asked them if they, without tweezers, I would definitely have them on a brow. Um, and I asked them if they could do that, and they're like, "Yeah, yeah, we can do your eyebrows. We just can't do the underline of your eyebrows because it's too close to your eyeball," which is fine. And I think that's why, God, what's his very odd, eccentric bodybuilder with his face tattooed?
Lee Priest.
Lee Priest. I think that's why Lee Priest still has his eyelids tattooed, even though he got the rest of his face tattoos removed, because you can't do that area. So I wonder how close to the eye you can go to get like a clean line on your beard.
Don't know, but he got his face tattoo redone.
Yeah, he put it
I
back
did
on.
know that.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure.
Apparently his current missus had made a passing comment of like, oh yeah, well, that tattoo was sick. And he was like, oh, and he just went and got it redone, just off whim, like something like that.
Imagine being that impulsive.
Yeah.
Hard pass.
I'd be dead by
Okay.
now. That sort of behavior. Like you'd surely make a really silly decision if you were that impulsive.
Mm. Yeah, look, maybe he's gotten lucky many, many times.
I was about to say exactly that.
Yeah. Speaking of tattoo removal, I sent out some inquiries recently to get my lipstick tattoo removed. And this lady basically was saying, maybe there's other tattoo removalists that will do it, but I will only remove the by the way, for those who are looking on YouTube and are like, your lips look fine. They don't. Thank you, though. I'm wearing lipstick. She said she'd only do the outline of my lips. So if I was to get removal with her, I would get the outline of my like very dark grayish purple lipstick removed. The inside would remain the same. And why would anyone want that? So I'm just going to keep it as it is. Bizarre, right?
That's odd.
Also, did you have to ask her for the tattoo removal in Spanish or in English?
Oh, for my labia.
Your labios. Labios.
My labios. That's right. That's how you say lips in
Mm-mm-mm.
Spanish. That's really funny.
I would like to get my
Okay, next
labios
question.
touched up labios.
Maybe that's why she was not keen on going on like the inside.
She's
Maybe
like,
there
I'll
was
just
an
do the outside. Yes,
indication of what lips we're thinking on here.
possible.
It's so funny. It's very true. Yeah, I think there's a bit of a language barrier there. Okay, next question. I'm not really sure if I understand this question, so please help me. How to win at life / favorite quotes or sayings to help.
Just don't be a cunt. There you go.
That was pretty spot on.
I feel like we need to
Words
come
to
up with
live
some
by.
Australian sayings for George to use. We know he loves, we're not here to fuck spiders, but I'm not a person who's ever lived by quotes or sayings or anything like that. I just don't have them. Like carpe diem, whatever. And half the time I was like, what does even that mean? I don't know.
Is it like your high school Latin?
Yeah,
Okay.
Okay. Be genuine. That I think is probably a pretty good start to winning at life. Be inquisitive. I think that's a pretty good motto to live by. And I don't know what else. What do you any George?
I think you summarized the keyest point right in that first one. Don't be a cunt. I think that is a great way to lead your life. I think something I would say that would help in this is to be a little bit more selfish. There are definitely times in life where you won't put yourself in front of others, and it could be a pinnacle point where it could end up actually benefiting your long-term progression in whatever avenue it was. Don't be afraid to say no to people. No is probably the least used word on the planet when it comes to human behavior, despite contrary belief. We're very easy just to always people please and do what the mass or what the group thinks. And my biggest strides in where my life has become more fulfilled has been where I've been to the outside world, perhaps a little bit more selfish.
Can I extend on that point, George? I think people often confuse being selfish with self-care, and they're not the same thing. So, like, someone might say, oh, I said no to like going around to a friend's house and hanging out because I needed to get to bed on time so I could wake up for training and get my food prep done. That's not selfish. That's self-care. Selfish would be, in my opinion at least, not considering somebody else's needs or something like that. It's like, no, I'm weighing up my needs to get to bed on time and take care of myself to someone just wanting to like hang out on the couch for no particular reason. And I think we need to like not think of ourselves as being selfish when we take care of ourselves, because also when we do take care of ourselves, we can then be a better friend and a better coach and a better partner and a better, I don't know, like student or whatever you identify as. And we can be there for other people better when we show up for ourselves.
Absolutely. Reframe selfish to self-care. That's what I meant, listeners. That's the one.
Love it. But sometimes it is also okay to be selfish occasionally.
Yeah. Can I add one more that I just thought of too, because I think I see this a lot, is to like seek progression, because I think it's a good thing to seek, but don't chase it indefinitely, to the point where I think people always think they have to be constantly like doing something more and more and more and more and progressing and progressing and progressing, and you'll just never ever hit a point of satisfaction or contentness. Is contentness a word?
Smell the roses? I think it is.
Yeah. I see that all the time. And I think that's one thing I've actually been very good at, is like recognizing that I'm quite happy with the progress that I've made, and then just sitting in it for a while, and then eventually determining like whether or not there's something else that I want to progress at, and then going at that, but never like always just seeking progress for the sake of seeking progress because it makes me feel good about myself. I think that's maybe something to live by too.
Absolutely.
And maybe that's why a lot of athletes really struggle with retiring, because when it comes to bodybuilding, there's always a body part that you can bring up. There's always something you can do differently or better in a prep, or there's, I don't know, like you could always be a little bit leaner here or there, or your posing could improve or something like that. But if somebody really is that hell bent on progressing, just remember that there's other areas of your life that you could think about as well. Maybe you can maintain your physique while you improve your shitty relationships. Maybe you could maintain your physique while you like go after something in your career, or I don't know, like reduce your anxiety as a person or whatever it is.
Mm. It's funny, just as a training analogy, that's the same as like people isolate the idea of progressive overload in training as being only load on the bar for some reason. Like that's
Right,
the
not
only way you can
repetitions
progress.
or
And it's
yeah.
the same with life. Is like you don't have like progress in life doesn't mean you have to earn more money, or that you have to have more friends, or that you have to have a particular car. It could be, or that you only can progress in bodybuilding. It could be all those other things you just mentioned too.
It could be that you could have better relationships, not just more. It could be that you spend your money more resourcefully, not just earn more. Like there's other ways to frame the same thing.
Yeah.
The more we speak about this, the more I can think of different things that help. And one of the biggest ones that I'd say helped me would be removal of expectation in every single avenue and scenario. Just completely removing expectation of a governed situation, because nothing is actually truly laid out in front of you as like a script or a structure, and that life is going to just do what life does, and you just kind of have to roll with the punches. An expectation would never lead you up for typically more failure, disappointment when things don't quite go to plan. Whereas if you come at it from a neutral perspective of just flow with life and see how things roll, you're always kind of in a neutral, somewhat happy position.
Can I have an example?
You can use like short-term examples of even like physique development, having this expectation of in the next 12 months making X amount of progress, and then being really pissed off when you look at your friends who have made loads of great, I know, interlinking comparison here, but the expectation is because this person's growing like they are, I'm going to grow doing the same thing. That expectation sets you up for disappointment. But the same can be said for life, like having this expectation of needing to, like the psychosocial pressure of having the house, having the family at a certain age. That expectation, if you don't have it by a certain point, can lead to disappointment and regret, or just ill feelings for no reason.
Yeah, okay, fair enough. So you're not saying don't have goals. It's like
no. Just don't have
my goal is to build muscle, and I'm going to do the best that I can do, and we'll see what that is.
Yeah, exactly that. Nothing wrong with setting the goalpost to aim for, but just the journey in which and the process to get there, you shouldn't have that thought out, because it's going to figure itself out as you roll.
Yeah. As Dean and I, it's no secret that we travel a lot. I think in the beginning, even before I met Dean, I would have these expectations of what a country would be when I get there. And nothing is ever as you expect it to be. A person, a place, a hobby, like nothing. And I pretty quickly let go of that. Um, and I'm like, hey, I kind of have this idea in my mind that Morocco or Italy or fucking Mexico is going to be like this, but let's see. And then when you get there, there's no disappointments. You're just like open to what it is. And you're not kind of biasing, like, I have this expectation that Vietnam would be X, Y, and Z. I'm not blocking out the things that I don't expect it to be and focusing on the things that it is, because that's not really even the reality.
Mm.
And same with when you get to know a person who you know online, like just be open to figuring out who they are without this like preconceived idea because you've read a few of their posts.
It's also harder to be disappointed when you go at it with that approach.
Mm-hmm.
Like if you do go to use the country example, go to Morocco and you think it's going to be all of these things. And then you get there and you're like, oh, it's actually, not that it is. It's not this, it's not this. Or you start to then think it's like, oh, it's not all of these things that I thought it was going to be. And you miss out on the opportunities to see all the things that it actually is. Or that it could be in that particular time, because that's another thing that like I've learned, like people's opinions of places that they've been to are not necessarily representative of the experience that I will have, because I'm not them and they're not me, and the time that they go is not the time that I go, and like, that maybe I live there versus they holiday there, and like there's so many different like experiences to be had in the same place for different people. Yeah, I mean, this is kind of all just like a little bit of a rediscussion around that process focus versus goal focus initially for George's one about lowering expectations and enjoying the journey. And yeah, they're all good.
Good one, George.
Hey, I'm not just a pretty face.
You're not a pretty fit. No, I'm joking.
Oh, I'm not.
I think you're pretty, George. Okay, last question. What made you want to be a coach? George
Well,
first.
got enough time? Fuck me. A million and one mistakes in my younger years that led me to see that for me to grow and develop as a person, I required help. And in that process, it led me to develop a mindset of wanting to help others and reciprocate that same help that I'd received. So it didn't necessarily need to be coaching physique development or bodybuilding. It just ended up being a need and a want to help other people in the same way that I'd had help.
But why did you want to do that?
Because I'd got very lost in my younger years through quite openly drug addiction and mistakes as a kid that put me in a lot of positions where I could ruin the trajectory of my life. And if it wasn't for those people that stepped in and helped me at those times, I wouldn't be the person that I am. And that developed like a core response in me to want to reciprocate that out to the world. The physique development stuff, like becoming the bodybuilding coach, happened after. That was the core behind it. And then I fell in love with training and bodybuilding myself, which I then went, oh, this can overlap here. There's an opportunity to do that thing I wanted to do.
Cool. Okay.
Yeah, vastly different experience to myself. um, Even from an early age, I remember always seeking out some form of a captain's role in every sporting team that was available to me to play in. And then I only ever played in team-based sports as an adolescent and as a child. And then I think as I moved through education, I just followed a very like cliche, I'm in sports, therefore I learn sports. And I learned human movements and exercise science. And I think becoming a coach was a pretty natural progression for me because I just really enjoyed trying to unlock athletic potential in individuals. So at least from a performance coaching perspective, that was my like true passion initially. But then what I've probably learned over like the last like 10 years of coaching one-on-one with bodybuilders specifically is that um, I get a lot of satisfaction, like I said, seeing other people's personal success, but having like playing a role in it. And I feel like that's almost like my version of the like team celebration now for me. It's just in a way more condensed version. So like the individual that I help gets the progress that they're seeking and the result that they're after. And I find that satisfying. But then we kind of celebrate together collectively as a team. So I still have the team environment that I'm used to, having grown up in team sports, but in a very individual manner, which I much prefer because it's far more condensed. And you're not reliant upon, the third, the fourth, the fifth, the sixth, and the seventh player. You're just relying on you two, which I really, really like.
Okay. Not a question that anyone asked, but a question that I'm asking. George, You have to choose a new industry to work in. It can't be related to fitness at all. What do you do?
I go straight into AA work specific to working with kids in the age bracket of 12 to 18 that were very much in that position I was. That's exactly where I'd go straight away.
Okay. I feel like you thought about this.
I
Very clear.
no, it was potentially one of my like I guess not a side hustle would be a very wrong way to describe it, but there's been many a times where I've looked at my schedule and been like, oh, I've got a bit of time here. Like it'd be great to give back, do something within the community that I know can be of service and actually I can actually provide some sort of help to these people, not from a what's the word? Like I don't exactly have accreditation to work in these spaces, but you can go and volunteer and be that person that comes in as the supporter who explains their story, talks to the people on that level, being through the same experiences they've been through. So it was always something I've kind of considered wanting to go into anyway, just again latching onto that kind of core value of wanting to help others. So that definitely would be my fallback. I would go straight into that sort of space or upskill myself to be able to then work professionally in that space, I should say.
Okay. I think you'd rock at that, George, and I support you doing it as well as being a coach. I think you could do both.
No, absolutely.
Yeah, it's just maybe not a side hustle, so to speak.
No, it would be more like a hobby.
Yeah,
Side
hobby.
cuddle.
Passion,
Side cuddle.
passion project.
Yeah.
No, I know.
Let me kill it.
Broadway. No, I have no idea. I just thought I'd say something. I would become a master potter. Is that a thing too? A master of pottery?
Oh, I thought you said podder in that podcast. Then I was thinking,
No,
what?
I like very specific skill acquisition, right? Like you're good at football, you're good at bodybuilding, you're good at art, like drawing specifically, or whatever it may be. But I know I'm not very good at a lot of the trade-based skills. So I wouldn't, necessarily become a builder or anything like that, or an architect. But there's nothing else that really has that. I've never ever really considered what else I would do other than something that is involved with human performance. It's so far beyond my capacity of even thinking, because it's been like this since I was 4.
Okay, Dean, that's the worst answer ever. The answer is I don't really know. And I think you bored everyone. So
if I was to say, like, what do I think would be fun, and if does money matter?
No, I don't know. Yes, yes, it does.
That's not exactly.
If money matters, it makes it far more difficult.
You, then it matters. If money doesn't matter to you, then it doesn't matter. Like, okay, just think. Okay, we're going to move on very quickly, listeners. I know this isn't very exciting, but Dean, if you had to literally choose a new career, and yes, it had to pay whatever you think is necessary to support your current life or the life you want, then it matters.
Some form of psychology, like down that route of helping and assisting people still, but in a very specific domain of something in the psychology. I'm not sure what that would be.
Okay. Sports psych, probably.
Maybe, yeah, I mean, it could be like performance anxiety in sports. No, I don't know. I don't think actually that would interest me, because I honestly would be a little bit like, nah, that's not. It would be something a bit deeper than that, I think.
He's like performance anxiety. What's that?
I actually think it would be something that requires somebody to have a very, very good grasp on managing their emotions to the point where other people's difficulties don't impact my own life. So that's where I'd probably go.
Okay. Cool. It kind of surprises me because Dean is deeply non-empathetic.
That's why I think I'd be good at it, though.
Oh, I disagree. I think you'd be the worst psych ever, personally. Honestly, like the worst. That's fine.
I don't know, though, because as a male, with my experience of working with psychologists, and I've had a fair few, I'd say that those that are less empathetic, like in the approach to psychology, we look at like a female structure to a male structure, the approaches technically would need to be different. So that when he said that, I'm like, yeah, do you know, if I went in there and had someone who wasn't all like, oh, let's talk about how you're feeling, someone who just, and in my experience, is someone who has gone logically, right, here's a plan, this is what we need to do, it has always worked better for me.
I think that the job of a psychologist is to figure out what's going to work best for the person in front of them, not to be the person that's always deeply empathetic or always deeply like process driven. It's like, does this person need to talk? or does this person need a solution right now? And like, just knowing Dean, I think if somebody went in there with an emotion that he feels is too dramatic, or he feels is, which obviously shows up in our relationship, doesn't it, Dean? Or he feels like, well, this person shouldn't still be upset about this thing, instead of being like, well, people have different, people express themselves differently. Some people get over things faster than other people. I could just see him being annoyed with them.
As a professional, I'm not going to be annoyed. I think there's a big difference between personal relationships and professional ones. And I think you can disassociate your responses far easier in a professional setting than what you can in a personal one.
Well, I'm not booking in with you because I still maintain that you'd be the shittest psychologist known to mankind. George, I'll book in with you, mate. Let's chat.
I am very much up for the latest approaches, Liz, in psychiatric treatment. You have PTSD, right? Yes, cool.
Drugs. Eat some mushrooms. All right, fun. So let's wrap it up with a la shit tip.
I guess coming off the thread of where we are, learn with your clients when the right time to show emotion, show empathy is, and when the right time would be to use logic, use problem solving, and set a baseline plan. There's a time where we need to switch on our emotions, coaches, and times where we do need to make sure we switch it off.
I love that. Perfect. All right. Something worth. Sorry, Dean. Did you want to jump in there as well?
No, we can roll on that one.
I just don't think anything would beat George's one. So that was great. Something worth sharing. Anything at all?
Personal update. We've signed our papers on a house.
That's worth sharing. Happy days.
It's actually a beautiful house. George sent me the link. And I had a little digital tour of the house. It is beautiful. And you even have your own little garden.
Yeah, garden outside.
What is it, 3-bedroom?
Yeah, so the main thing we wanted was to have like
a 2-bedroom and an office.
No, technically 3 beds because we're going to move the office outside.
Oh, nice.
I want space to host. I want space to have people come over, stay whenever they travel. Like quite a lot of my now very good friends are dotted all over the fucking world. So it's like I want somewhere where I can be the hub. I can come, stay, chill. As long as you need, we have some fun.
Will you get a barbecue for your backyard, please?
I'm going to build one. I don't want to buy one. I want to build my own.
Yes.
With a pizza oven on the side.
The Kamado Joe.
Yes, I love pizza ovens.
The Kamado Joe, that's the ticket. Built into a nice wood frame. I'll come over and smoke you some meats.
Yeah, no, I do need that. The Aussies have a good way to barbecue.
We do. I always think it's funny how the Americans try and mock us by saying we're going to throw a shrimp on the barbie. It's like we don't actually say shrimp in Australia, so it's not funny.
You absolute morons.
We say prawns. Please mock me properly. Thank you. George, I also require you to get one of those, those blue plastic shell pools?
Yeah.
I would like one of those.
Yep.
Yeah. I would like to splash in one while Dean smokes meats.
Absolutely.
Perfect. Congratulations, by the way. This is very exciting. When do you move in?
We get our moving date sort of in the next 10 to 12 days. We'll get a date.
Cool.
Just gotta wait for
and when does the lease of your current apartment run out?
Well, I mean, we can kind of leave whenever we want because I technically haven't signed a contract for this place for the last 2 years.
Your month to month.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's just we just kind of leave as and when.
Cool. Hey, before a would you rather, I have just an interesting fact about property in Spain. Now that we're on the topic of real estate, Dean and I recently purchased property in Spain. Far less exciting than George. It's just investment. It means nothing to us. We didn't even go there. We were like, oh yeah, that one sounds good. When you have tenants in the property that you own and you hire property management, they charge you 9% of the monthly rent, which is quite high, but that's okay. Not that much higher than Australia, which is usually like 6 to 8%. But they're legally not allowed to enter the property to do property inspections to make sure your apartment isn't turning into a meth lab. They just can't go in there ever. You just get tenants, and then when they exit, you can see if your place is in good nick or not. Isn't that crazy?
What?
I know. And so I said to the property management company, what on earth am I giving you 9% for? basically property management here in Spain, from my understanding thus far, is they work as your accountants for the income of that property. So they'll lodge my tax and they'll, like, I don't know, pay the water bills and shit. Like, that's what Australian property managers do too, to be fair, except they don't lodge your tax for you. But yeah, they're basically like accountants for your property, but they don't do any inspections. Like, what are you managing then
Or like
exactly?
finance managers rather than a property manager.
Pretty much.
Yeah,
So
weird, right?
you
And
guys go and do an inspection on the place, though, right? Not at all.
Nope.
no, it's illegal to enter. Like, I guess you could ask permission from the tenant, but it's like very uncommon, and yeah, people don't do that here.
And also, the
Saying-
ones that give you permission are the ones that are good tenants. So if they say no, you're like,
yeah.
well, we're fucked. So I'll just wait until the lease is up.
What you're saying is, if we wanted to perform some suspicious activity, we rent a place.
Rent a house in Spain.
Cool.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying.
But
Yeah.
there was also like much stricter rules, I think, in regards to the agreement timeframe, and that like 12 months, if they leave, they have to pay out like the remaining 12 months. Like they can't, the break lease is very different in that they're committing to 12 months worth of rental payments. But then you also can't evict them, I think they said, for 2 years. That's the first time that you can technically evict them. So there's a bunch of weird rules. Anyway.
Yeah, like we are what's the word? We're locked in to allowing a lease renewal. I actually thought it was 5 years, Dean, but that sounds
You're probably
unreasonable
right.
now that I say that out loud. Yeah. Yeah, we have to let them renew.
Yeah, that's right. That was it. Yeah. They're legally allowed to renew indefinitely, well, not indefinitely, for up to 5 years. We can't kick them out just because we don't want them there. But then yeah, they're obliged to be paying for at least a certain period of time too.
So we didn't find this out until we already owned the property, and then I contacted property managers, and I was like, "So how frequently do you do the inspections?" I was like, "Why is every property manager dodging this question? Like, I don't understand why people aren't like replying to this portion of my questions." And so like I tend to dig my heels in when I need the answers for things. I was like, "As per above," and then that's when I got that answer.
All right. What's the would you rather, Liz? I need to pee real bad.
Oh, do ya? Would you rather spend your life with the sensation of having to be busting to pee, regardless of if you've just done a big pee? You always have that sensation.
I'm out.
Or always be a little bit nauseous.
I'd rather be nauseous. I hate having to need to pee. It makes me super nervous, and I'm ready to finish. Like I hate having to hold on to pee.
I'm a go with the feeling of needing to pee. Like that just describes my check-in process every morning. Is just going, I'm just going to do this next one, then I'm going to go downstairs and go to the toilet. I'm going to do this next one, and by like 4 check-ins, you're still sat there going, Jesus Christ, I'm going to die. But I can deal with that. Nausea, nah.
I hate nausea. I get motion sick in cars and buses. And Dean, you can go. Bye. Me and George are
Done.
Go. Seriously.
Thanks,
bye.
everyone.
Okay. Bye. Bye, Dean. Yeah, so I spend a lot of time being nauseous whenever I'm in a bus or a car or something like that. And I hate that feeling. So I'm probably going to go with peeing as well.
See, I couldn't get my T4 meds when I was in Vegas, just because they're just getting stuff through the chemist and everything was a bit more sticky than when I'm over here in the UK. And one of the typical side effects, in some cases, can be vertigo. So I was there thinking, oh, haven't got my Telmosata and blood pressure's high. Oh, shit, maybe just take a little aspirin just in case on one of those stressful days. And then I had the worst vertigo I've ever had, Liz, and it did not leave until 3 days before the trip. So the entire time I was in Vegas, when I was just wandering around, I was going, oh shit, I feel like I could just drop. Oh shit, I'm spinning. What's going on?
It makes it hard to eat. It makes it hard to train. It makes it hard to focus. It's awful.
Was not fun. 10 out of 10 did not recommend. So yeah, I'm taking the P.
Yeah, do not recommend. All right, guys. Thanks for listening. Thanks for your time, George. And we'll see everyone in the next episode.
See you later, guys.